Welcome to the Fullcaster Podcast, episode 14. Today we have our first race official as a guest, who I hear is actually a listener as well, probably caught most of the episodes, and that's Taylor Jocelyn. If the name sounds familiar to some listeners, it's because his son Cameron was on the show before, one of the earlier episodes. But Taylor is known in the sport for a heck of a lot more than just being Cameron's dad, or Shelby's for that matter, the scoring extraordinaire. Looking forward to talking to him here about race officiating and a whole lot more. But first, obviously, we'll kick things off with some current events. And speaking of current events, we had an event this last weekend. LAKC back in action here at Cal Speed. And our good buddy here, Derek, you went racing again, my man.
I did. It was pretty cool to see karts going around the track again for sure. Though, with more than just an open practice day. But yeah, I got to be back in the kart this weekend and did some racing with Formula Works, and it had a little bit of change of scenery. Was on the GFC chassis this past weekend. That was a good time.
Yeah, and Gary Carlton, actually, the G and the C and the GFC there.
MDF.
Yeah, indeed. He's actually there. But Sonny Cervelli too, one of his primary guys, was there as well, and they were kind of all hands on deck, really staying on top of those karts, etc.
Yeah, so it was myself on a GFC, Alex Saragusa, as well as can't remember the kid's first name, but Porter is the last name. It was us three seniors in the KA category, as well as Porter's younger brother in the cadet category. So a couple of us find the GFC colors under that tent. But yeah, it was cool to have those guys there and be invested as much as they were. Gary was kind of popping around, keeping on everything, and I got to really do a lot of work with Sonny this week, and as well as Travis Serving. He's kind of the main guy I'm working under with that tent. But Sonny being there was just picking my brain on how I prefer to drive, what I need to do to get more out of the kart, and doing data. That was the first real weekend I got to do that, and doing it with a guy that helped develop the tag chassis is kind of a neat thing, and had a little bit more insight to how the thing works.
Yeah, I mean, you've been rolling with the Formula Works guys basically, since middle last year, right?
Yeah.
And working with Travis most of the time has been kind of your main dude, but and obviously he knows what the hell he's doing. But what was it like running or working with Gary? Because that was like the first time you had actually spent a lot of time around Gary or Sonny, right? I mean, so had you met those guys before though, just as a Cal Speed guy?
I had just met them before, just from challenge of helping them get their pit set up and all that. Just doing the admin stuff. But I mean, it was neat. I mean, I've known about Gary for so long, but everything that he's done was before my time in karting. So it's just been hearing stories from everyone. And Sonny, I've seen race out here. I saw him race at Pro Tour last year, as well as just have heard about him as well from some other stuff. But they're both, I mean, normal people, I guess I could say. Gary's super knowledgeable, and what the cool part is, and actually Sonny said this, was a lot of the geniuses, if you will, can seem unapproachable, but Gary's very much approachable, which he is. Average dude, but he's down to business, and he's got answers for you, but he knows how to translate to each driver, was what I got from him, because I did data with him on Saturday evening, as well as I did a track walk with him and Sonny afterwards, and the other drivers. But they both know what they're talking about, and if they're
speaking of that, actually, sorry to cut you off, but the doing the track walk, you've been around the place a few times, right? We're not talking about a new track to you.
Yeah.
It's a track. So what was that track walk like on a track you know?
It was interesting because it's a lot of, they're telling me a lot of stuff I already know, and it's not to sound cocky, but it's just they're reminding me of some of the basics throughout of, they're kind of doing fine tuning with me, but at the same time on the other side of it, they're reminding me of what we're trying to do while driving, right? So a lot of it was coming down to getting the wheel straighter sooner, all that, but it was all the small stuff that just taking this corner a little bit wider and trying to, if you cheat the track a little bit more, if you will. So for instance, the two corners I was losing a lot of time in was turn one coming up the hill, and then Sportivo, the downhill left-hander. And both corners, we were overlaying my data with Brendan DeLordo, who was the quickest guy under our tent.
I think he ended up winning this weekend too, didn't he?
Yeah, he was on a comp kart, and he was the guy to beat for sure. But we're overlaying the data, and in those two corners, he's half a kart wider than me on entry and getting a little bit more rotation, a few other things, but this whole time I'm like, man, I feel like I'm driving pretty good, and I am. It just, there's a different way of doing it that's going to be a little bit more efficient.
And that's how tight the margins are.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, it was that 2/10 quarter second he had me on pretty much all weekend, and it was a 10th here and a 10th and a half there, and maybe that would grow or get smaller depending on how good of a lap I had. But yeah, for a track I know so well, it was getting a little bit more out of it from that outside perspective, and also just from, you and I had a lot of conversations this weekend about making the transition from just 4-stroke racing to 2-stroke. And
Right.
regardless of, I'm 26, so I'm the oldest guy in that senior field.
Really?
I think so.
Were you the oldest one?
I'm pretty sure.
Well, no, you had Tim Meyer out there. He was
Tim Meyer was there this weekend. Yeah,
he was hanging out.
He's a little bit of an asterisk, but but yeah, on any given day, I'm typically the older guy in the senior field, especially here on the club racing side. But for as long as I've been doing it, the 2-stroke stuff, I'm more than a rookie at right now. And just to get that 2-stroke mindset to teach me a little bit was pretty neat on just, some of the tips and tricks.
It's a little bit different, yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, you did pretty damn good. I mean, you qualified 6th, ended up moving up a couple spots in 4th. I think you said you are going to get by the time this is up, probably have the heat race out on YouTube that people can check out. You going from 6th to eventually 4th.
Yeah.
And then the start, you got up to 3rd.
Yeah, the main started off good, and I actually feel pretty good on the starts. Even back when we're doing the VLR, the KA package and that, like I always felt like I could make up stuff on the starts. And for sure this weekend I did, and it was nice doing it on a different chassis.
Yeah.
But
and you were like, throw the checkered.
Yeah, no, man. So I got up to 4th in the heat, started there for the main and got up to 3rd, and then, for one reason or another fell back and ended up finishing 7th. But man, it was a huge learning experience, and it was a ton of fun. That was the other thing you and I had talked about a lot on Saturday night, was making sure it's just going to be fun and have a good time. And
no pressure.
Yeah. So despite the finishing position, I think I raised a few eyebrows, and I got a lot out of working with Travis, Sonny, and Gary for that weekend. So it was a lot of fun.
That's pretty awesome. And then obviously, getting a chance to be back in the seat, it's got to feel good. And then this weekend, we're going into the running a team thing again for the first time since March. We're at CSK Racing. We're running again with Tri-C. Tri-C's got a double header. It's kind of cool for us because we're getting back into doing that, and like we've already kind of talked about, a little bit here and there, but it's going to be kind of our, not just this weekend, but the rest of the year, our swan song. It'll be our last season doing the CSK. It's going to be a
send-off for us, yeah.
Yeah, so we've, after doing, 3 years now is our 4th year, 4th season, and we're going to go ahead and just close the doors on CSK at the end of the year. Just, going to try and do some other stuff. Maybe even go racing at Tri-C a little bit instead of working our butts off all the time.
The CSK thing has been a lot of fun. It's been cool to help people move up the ladder and, just kind of point them in the right direction, if you will. But, yeah, it ran its course, and I think we did what we needed to. But, yeah, it will be cool, whether we're here racing or working or taking the day off on that Tri-C day. I know you want to try to go run that Masters category in KA.
Looks like good fun right there, buddy.
I think that would be pretty cool to see you do that. But, yeah, it'll be nice to finish off this year strong, hopefully, as we've had the last few years, and then see where the drivers end up next year.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just our job to try to give them the best that we can, as we always have, and hopefully we snag a couple more championships, like you said. And and then actually, if you're listening to this right when it comes out, the last weekend, the one hasn't happened yet live here, but it's going to be the Classical GP. It's popping up, and that's where we end up going back to officiating like we do with all of the arrive and drive stuff. And well, speaking of officials, that's exactly who we got.
It's officially the time.
It's officially the time. Nice. I see what you did there.
Yes. I hope so.
Yeah. We actually have one of the, like I said, the first race official on the show, and I'm actually really excited to get him on here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and make it happen. Come on over, Taylor Jocelyn. Taylor Jocelyn, thanks for coming out, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm stoked to have yet another listener, someone who's actually listening to the show and being on it. Before we get into the other kind of crap, what do you think of the show, actually?
I like it, and it's a lot better than I thought it would be, because I know you, Mike. And
he's like, Derek can't carry it forever. So.
Right, I know. No, it's actually, I really like how you're able to get into your guests and get them to open up about stuff that people that know them have never heard about.
Right.
And they seem relaxed, and hopefully you can relax me.
Yeah. We'll work
No,
on
it's
that.
been really good. I've caught all but a couple, and it's just timing. I'll get to all of them eventually.
Nice. Well, hey,
Yep.
we appreciate you listening and whatnot. And kind of like I had mentioned in the current events, you are the first race official that we've had on the show. But that's not
Yep.
the day-to-day. That's not what puts food on the table, etc. What
Nope.
is the occupation for Taylor Jocelyn?
I'm a small painting contractor in Southern California. We mainly do, high-end homes. It's kind of fun to go work in multi-million-dollar homes. We
Live there for a few hours.
Live there for a few hours. Do mainly stain and lacquer work, fun painting stuff.
How long you been doing that?
30 years?
Wow. And it's
Yeah.
your company, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
And it's been your company the entire
The whole-
time?
yeah, the
30
whole
years.
time.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think so.
And I happen to know you've also dabbled in even like helmet painting. So like that's just a little hobby, little thing on the side. You still doing that? I haven't seen a helmet out of you for a while. I think, Dwayne
Yeah,
Lawson's
yeah,
got
Dwayne
Dwayne
was
one.
probably
Lawson.
the last one.
A lot of them that I've done recently have gone out of state. And it's mainly friends and family.
Gotcha.
Time is tough to work that stuff in.
Right.
And it's a labor of love. You can't make any money at it doing it one-offs, like I am.
Right.
Um,
And now that Cameron's not running, the primary helmet guy is.
primary
Yeah.
helmet guy
The
is no
sponsored
longer
driver.
in need. He's no longer in need. In fact, I have a helmet for him that's waiting to be painted.
Oh, cool.
The last one I painted for him has disappeared.
Oh,
That's what
really?
he mentioned
Yeah,
too.
I think
he said
somebody-
he
Oh, that's
snagged
right.
it.
Yeah, out of
swiped
the
it here
Jeep
to
or
super or something like that.
Yeah.
That sucks. 'Cause that was like Cameron.
Yeah.
That helmet had
Yeah.
Cameron all over
That's
it.
the thing about the helmet thing, right? We were talking about when we were trying to get our wraps design. Like when you were basically an evolution of your paint
My past
design.
one, yeah.
And I was kind of trying to do something new, but just the part of the driver, part of the personality is the helmet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having that kind of special design or something where you can look at it and go, oh, that's them. It always messes me up when people do something completely different. Like if they change teams or change manufacturers or whatever, they go from like, comp cart's bright yellow, so there's a lot of that. And then they go to say, I don't know, CRG, so there's a ton of orange. It's like, I knew you was the yellow helmet, right?
Yeah.
Like you're
I don't
messing
know
me
who
up
you
here.
are anymore.
Yeah.
Along those lines, I know Shelby, my daughter, was the scorer everywhere.
Right.
When she started, she was hand scoring, which meant you wrote down everybody's number as they drove by. Those cadet classes had 35, 40 kids in them. And sometimes they would change helmets and it would screw her up because she would
Right. I
see,
believe
oh, that's Timmy's helmet. And it goes by and, oh, no, it was Jacob wearing Timmy's helmet. Yeah.
Jesus.
Because you look out on the racetrack and you can see the helmet, you know who it is,
Yeah.
you know how they drive, you know what to expect.
I remember when I came here officiating, Rob always tried to get me to call out cart numbers and stuff like that. But shit, I knew, like at least with the arrive and drive stuff, I knew half the guys already from indoor and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I was calling them out from across the track because of their helmet.
Just their helmet.
And he
yeah.
goes, hey, try not to call it the driver's name.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't know the number.
yeah.
Well, it was when I came over and started helping you with that, you'd rattle off all these names, and I'm going, I don't
Right,
know
yeah,
these
yeah.
people.
Give me a cart number.
Yeah. Or say the fourth in line or something. I don't know who these people are. But you run into that. I get to travel around and do a lot of officiating. And it comes down to you're in a hurry, you're trying to communicate with the other officials, and sometimes it's easier to say the name.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess kind of finishing up on the occupation, if you will, you do the painting and stuff like that. I kind of went off on the tangent on the helmet thing, but
okay.
so you do that. You've been doing that for 30 years, etc. But yeah, as you just mentioned, you do travel around, you do the officiating thing, and that's almost another side gig that you do on the weekends. You talk about labor of love and whatnot. Obviously, you're going to have a bit of passion. I mean, Derek and I obviously do the officiating thing for the arrive and drive
Right.
stuff. Actually, I think one of the first times I met you was at the 2011 Grand Nationals here for IKF.
Yep.
That I had just started in June, and those Grand Nationals are like in August or something like that. And I was one of the assistant race directors
Right.
Under you. And you getting a chance to go around and do those different things, it kind of being a side job. You're not doing that for the money, though, right? That's
No.
That's not like, oh, sweet, another little check.
No, yeah. I usually lose money every time I go to a race. They pay me, but yeah, I would make
Depending
more
how
money if I
close the
stayed
race
home.
is, you lose less sometimes.
Yes, exactly. And it's fun. It's some of the hardest work. The stress level is huge. And I think that the team that we've assembled that I've been able to work with for the last 10 years I think they're the best of the best in officiating across the country.
And who are you working with, and what's the organization you do most of the time?
Well, I've done all of them.
Right.
But right now it's mainly Challenge of the Americas with Andy's deal with the rock
Seisman.
program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've got Mark Michonne, Casey Cook, who has been a great asset. He kind of came in by default, and now we won't let him leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Believe it.
Yeah.
We use him here as well. He actually used to work at Cal Speed, as a lot of people know, and whatnot. And yeah, he's phenomenal.
No, he fit right in. In the first hot on-track session, he was arguing with me over a call. So I said, "Yep, you're going to fit right in."
Good guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was still wrong, but
Naturally. You hear that, Casey?
Yeah. He's got it's ARD for him. It's just RD for Taylor. That's the difference. You're the assistant.
but I got to work the Florida Winter Tour with all of that crew back in the Rotax days. I've done the Rotax Grand Nationals.
You worked with Chris Egger and whatnot,
Chris
too, from
Egger.
my neck of the woods as well.
Yeah, in fact, my start was funny. I was that bad kid kart dad that was always in the official's face, always yelling, never happy. And Chris was the race director at the Gators program back then, and Cameron was racing. I was arguing with Chris on a race day basis. It was all the time. And Andy,
It's one way to meet new people.
it is.
really.
It really is. And Andy, the promoter, went to Chris and goes, "Hey, I've got an assistant for you." And he goes,
Nice.
"Great, we can use help. Who is it?" And he goes, "Taylor Jocelyn." And he goes, "Wait,
Here's my 2 weeks.
that Taylor?" It's like, "Yeah, I think he'll be a really good fit." "Are you sure?" And it was. We were a great fit. I learned a lot from him. We, I think, ran some really good races over the years. He retired. I took over that program. Throughout that, was hired to do Florida Winter Tour. Like I said, I also got to work the Rotex Grand Finals, which was really cool.
Is that the one that was here in the States?
Yes. Yeah, it was at NOLA down in New Orleans.
Oh, cool.
And I was one of 3 stewards in the office. I got to work and figure out the CIK program, how all that video marshaling worked, why there's so much paperwork in Europe.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was an eye-opener that we here in the States do things right, and I'll leave it at, leave it
Right.
at that.
Gotcha.
I also got to work with Nigel Edwards, who is the CIK race director for all of those huge events over in Europe. And Nigel he's the race director for karting.
Is he doing like all the WSK and
Yeah.
everything like that? Got it.
Yeah, he's that guy. And that was a lot of fun. We did the Rotex Nationals here at Utah, Miller, and I was able to work with him there. That was a lot of fun. And then he was also at the Grand Finals. It was fun.
And aside from traveling around doing that kind of stuff, you actually were also part of locally. I mean, you were, I think in the early days that I remember meeting you, it was LAKC race director, I think.
That's
at the
right.
time. Or maybe that was a little bit after Tri-C. I can't remember the timing. But anyway, race director at Tri-C, or excuse me, at LAKC. But then also, you were all a part of the Tri-C board at one time as well, and like that whole thing as well.
Yeah, I was a racer, ran with Cameron. I raced Tri-C and a bunch of other clubs, and would go to the board meetings. And one day they elected me president. I think I was in the bathroom and came back.
That was their chance.
Congratulations.
That was it. Hey, guess what? How do you like this?
We had a
Door
vote.
prize.
One of the really neat things that came out of that was another board member, Chris Saras, had some friends up in Lancaster. And the two of us worked for 2 years to put together what eventually became the Lancaster Grand Prix.
Oh, gotcha.
So we, many
Oh, you know what? I
trips.
forgot about that. Actually, Lancaster Grand Prix did start as a Tri-C
Tri-C
program.
event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we,
2008?
8 and 9. And we ran it in 8 and 9.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And we had some great ideas for 10, and it changed management, so
Right.
kind of went another direction.
But yeah, you've gotten a chance to. I mean, obviously, as a a driver yourself in karts
Mm-hmm.
to a tuner, obviously for Cameron and yourself, etc. But now then officiating, board guy, whatever. If there's a piece of the karting game, you've probably done it all. How did that get started? Like, let's talk about little Taylor.
The origin story of karting or origin story of racing?
Well, you were probably around for both.
Well, back when there were dinosaurs.
Yes.
Let me see. Race-wise, I was always going. My dad was a racer. He's passed. But he started racing before he could actually drive legally. So you had to be, back in the day, you had to be 21 to have a competition license.
Oh, okay. Is it, for what exactly? What
The SCCA.
Okay.
So running sports cars and formula cars. And he was a mechanic, and he had an old MGE that he built into a race car.
That's cool.
And he hired a guy to drive it, and the guy wasn't any good. So he would wear the other guy's coveralls and helmet and race. So he started racing, got married. He got married young. He was only 20 years older than I am. So as he was growing up racing, I was a baby and would go to the racetrack. I got to hang out in timing and scoring. We knew everybody that ran the races.
Where is this happening at? Where are you guys going racing? Did you live here in SoCal?
No, Kansas.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're
Okay.
Midwest.
So were you running at Heartland Park? Is that where they...
We
Topeka?
traveled all over. We ran Topeka. This was kind of later, but in the beginning when I was a baby and just cruising around, we'd go to Colorado. There were 2 or 3 tracks in Colorado, a couple in Kansas.
The regional
Yeah.
tour for
Yeah.
SCCA, that area?
Yeah, the mid-division. And so we would do that. I was actually at a race when, unfortunately, a bunch of drivers got killed at Continental Divide Raceways,
Oh, wow.
and I almost got killed. Almost got hit by a 55-gallon drum. What had happened, the race started in good weather, and it started raining, and this was 68, so it wasn't the competition like it
Safety's
is
through
now.
the roof at that point, yeah.
Exactly. So the front straight was lined with 55-gallon drums that were
Oh,
supposed to be
good.
full of water and cabled. And Formula B, which was the high-speed, big motor formula cars, one of them coming down the front straight hydroplaned and got into the barrels and spit those barrels out everywhere. They went flying everywhere.
Doesn't that sound nuts to think
Yeah.
like that's
That was
these
the-
days? Like
yeah.
that was the safety measure?
Oh, it was
Isn't
crazy.
that crazy?
Well,
And
they
it
got them at a
separate-
discount, so.
It separated the pits from the front straight.
Oh my
Right.
And it
gosh.
was crazy. And unfortunately, that driver was killed, and another couple drivers. Those barrels went flying into the paddock.
So they didn't have water and weren't
No.
cabled. Yeah.
Yeah, and they became weapons.
Wow.
And one of those barrels landed on the hood of my grandparents' car where we had been sitting. On the hood of the
wow.
car, it started
Jeez.
raining. We got in the car, and this barrel comes crashing down. Almost took me out as a youngster.
Wow.
But I hung out at the track. Would fall asleep in the race car in the garage while my dad was working on it. So I was kind of in that realm
You grew up
from the
around it.
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he rode motorcycles, and I had a mini bike, and we'd go ride. And he bought me a proper motorcycle, and I started racing.
So you started running motorcycles at how old? You said mini bike.
6.
6?
7 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably 4 and 5. I was doing mini bike stuff with Briggs and Stratton out in the fields. Then I got a Yamaha MX bike when they first came out. It was a MX60, and I was able to race that for a couple of years.
Let's talk about those early
Yeah.
races. Like, is this it's all in Kansas, right?
By then we were in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you moved from Kansas to Colorado
Right.
Pretty young.
in the early years here, but you start racing in Colorado on the 2-wheel stuff.
2-wheel stuff in Colorado, motorcycles first, and then bicycles.
And how did all that go? Like, were you killing it right out of the gate?
It was kind of like kid karts were here, almost participation trophy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As far as the motorcycles, I think it was an excuse so that the dads could bring their kids and race, and the
Yep.
kid could have a professional babysitter.
Exactly.
So, it was a lot of, the tracks were big GP tracks, and we would run on, a third of them. It was, before suspension and before big jumps. We just kind of cruise around.
Do you remember
Yeah.
those first races?
First race took the drop of the gate, which was actually a rubber band.
Nice.
They string a rubber band in front of you and then let go, and it's shoo, and then you went racing.
Wow.
And came around the front, and where all the mechanics were, all the dads were cheering everybody on. I thought my dad had a question, so I pulled over and stopped. Yeah, and he's going, "No, go,
What are you doing?
go." I was like,
Go,
"Oh,
how much?"
Okay. And off we go. Yeah, and I probably had some trophies. Just had fun. You know, I don't know that I even cared where we finished. I was at the racetrack with Dad, and I was racing.
It all started off as fun. There was no goal. It was just a family thing.
And he's racing motorcycles too at the same time. So he'd have a different moto, a different class. So you guys are both doing it.
Yeah.
Was he kind of I mean, you know, he did cars and everything. Did he just kind of want to do everything, or he got bored of cars and wanted to do bikes, or
Doing both?
Yeah.
I think it was more timing and finances. It was
So with the move to Colorado, did he switch from cars to bikes? 100%?
let me think. We did all motorcycles in Colorado in the beginning. I got him back into racing, thinking he would pay for my racing, and he liked racing again and went racing.
Backfired.
I know.
Wait,
He's like, you'll be at the track. You'll be around it.
Yeah.
So.
How'd you get him back in, and what was that whole thought process? I'm gonna try to get Dad back in so he can. And then how old are you? And so what are you guys doing?
Well, after motorcycles, we did BMX and we did a bunch of other stuff.
So you went from motorcycles to BMX.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And the BMX was more serious. I mean, we traveled all over the Midwest, came out here to California and ran at the LA Sports Arena, did an indoor race.
Wow.
What made you want to do the BMX stuff?
All the kids were riding.
Oh,
It was
okay.
like all my friends.
So instead of having to go to the motocross or the ORV park or
Yeah.
whatever, now you can just do it around town or whatever.
Exactly. And it was more structured. This was the 70s when BMX was king. You know, that was,
Gotcha.
you know,
It was a thing to do.
right. And so we did that, then moved to Tennessee and took about 10 years off of racing. My dad was trying to build a company. I was rebelling about going to Tennessee, you know, all of that kind of thing.
How old were you about that time?
Sophomore in high school through college.
Yeah, definite rebellion time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So-
What is in just because I'm curious now, because you said he was trying to build a company in Tennessee, and that was the move from Colorado over there.
Right.
It was a similar situation moving from Kansas to Colorado. Is that why you guys moved over that direction as well?
Work related. He was an engineer, excuse me, engineer and an accountant, worked for Beach Aircraft and designed parts, realized he was not going to be happy sitting at a drafting table designing parts. We moved to Colorado. He went to work for Coors as an accountant, then went to work at the United Banking System, brought a bank back from bankruptcy, and basically said to the board of directors, okay, I've accomplished that. I'm going to go do something else. So he had a friend that had franchised a pizza restaurant, and my dad researched, figured out Nashville was the place to start this, and we built Pepper's Pizza Company. Started out as Waldo Pepper's Pizza Company, an airplane theme because he was a pilot, and built it into 8 stores, sold a franchise. Then the 80s hit and the recession killed us and went back to Colorado.
Gotcha.
Then on my 21st birthday, because at this time you still had to be 21 to get your SCCA competition license, I had a Lotus Elan, which is the Miata copied the Lotus Elan for their design. You know, it weighed about 1,800 pounds, had 130 horsepower, nice little pocket rocket. And he said, I had a friend who did auto interiors. He goes, Taylor, I'll have Mark do your interior in the Lotus, or I'll pay for a driver's school. And I went, driver's school, right now, let's go.
This is Colorado.
Colorado. So I got to go, and I worked with a guy named Danny Collins, who was a professional racer back in the 60s, and drove Corvettes and big sedans and was an accomplished racer. And he had a driver's school. I went through his driver's school running Formula Fords. Got my waiver to get my regional license.
I'm sorry, how old were you? 21, right?
Yeah,
Where
you had
was
to be
the-
21.
Where was the school at?
Second Creek Raceways in Colorado.
Okay.
And it's no longer there, unfortunately. It was a really neat little, I think it was 1.9 mile course, fun track. Not straights weren't that long. Maybe get to 130 is about it. But it was fun.
It was meant for driving schools. It wasn't.
No, they had national events there.
Oh, really? Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, no, it was on the series that toured, the SCCA series that toured through there.
Actually, Portland International is only about 1.9 miles long as well. Yeah,
All
up
right.
there in Portland.
I mean, it's 1.9. I mean, it's still a good length, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you shake it.
And
yeah.
like Portland, it's they have the one long straight, which is the drag strip, and then a bunch of twisties and shit like that, and then on the back straight, the curving back straight. So
Yeah.
I mean, 1.9 is actually fairly standard, I think, for right around 2 mile for a lot of places.
Right.
Not everybody can have a Road America.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's so I went through the driver's school, got excited about racing. My dad got excited about racing. He had a business partner that he brought over to go through the school. I think he was thinking the same thing I was. Let's get the business partner to pony up some money and we'll go race. And that didn't work out very well either. But due to all of this, he was more than happy to help. And we, at that point, had 2 or more Formula cars in the shop. From that point forward, basically, he bought several race cars and let me race one as long as I prepped his and towed it to the racetrack. And, I got to spend his money. I wish I would have understood that I could spend his money. I would have done a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we got to run around all over Kansas and Colorado and went to Road America and Mid-Ohio, and we got to travel a lot.
Were you going to school at this time?
No.
Or no college for you, or what?
I had dropped out of college in Tennessee and was just doing the community college thing in Colorado. So I was going to college, but it didn't count.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
What
you
was
certainly didn't want to be there, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
What was your plan for studying, or did you just I'm just gonna take classes and just
I'm going to be a race driver.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Forget all of this.
Obvious.
I mean, come on. Actually, realized that I went to school to be an accountant, and I'm dyslexic. I can't sit still. I've got ADHD.
You're actually dyslexic, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So sitting there crunching numbers for some company was not in my future. And
Neither in theirs.
exactly. So I realized.
It's 37. No, it's 73, my friend.
But you got him out of bankruptcy. So
That's it. So I realized that education formally was not going to be my road to success. And during all of that, I was actually working for a painter, painting, and parlayed that into kind of my own little business where I did piecework for the painter. I approached him and said, hey, I need to make more money. How about you give me X for accomplishing Y, and if I can accomplish Y times 3, I'll make money. You'll make your profit.
Right.
We'll all make it out. And I did that for a couple of years before I moved to California. And then when I moved out here, I was hungry. The only thing I knew was contracting, so I started a painting company.
Wow.
gotcha.
So you've been basically painting and racing for about the same amount of time, or being involved in racing in some way, shape, or form. So going back to the car stuff and whatnot, you're in your early 20s, and you guys are starting. Your dad gets these cars and whatnot. You guys are able to go racing, and you say you've been traveling around. Are you good? Like, you get some championships? You go with SCCA. Did you do the runoffs? Yeah.
My rookie season, like I said, I got my waiver from the driver schools. Back then, you had to do 2 structured driver schools, which were all-day events where you drove on the racetrack under supervision of other drivers. They signed you off.
Shit, you had to do that in the 90s. I did that, or 90s, excuse me, early 2000s still at Portland. I had to do the Cascade Sports Car Club school over there before I could do the SCCA.
Right. And I think that was a good idea. It used to be that way in shifters.
Huh.
Yeah, you had to be signed off before you could go run a shifter at, wasn't SCCA, but it was before SCCA. Anyway, got my waiver from going to Danny's school, went to my first regional race, which was a double regional it was at an airport, an old Marine base in Kansas, and won both days.
Nice.
Because of that, because you're supposed to run, I think at the time it was 6 or 8 races, get signed
It
off.
was most of a season or something like that.
They signed my waiver so I could do nationals because the following month was a double national at the same event. I showed up and nervous. scared. Went out.
Is this the Super V that you're
No,
driving?
this was Formula Fords.
Oh, okay.
But back then, there were 30-car fields.
Right.
You know, that was the stepping stone into Super Vs, and then Super Vs into Champ Car. And it was basically that. You went club racing and Fords, national level Fords, then Super Vs, then Champ Car, IndyCar now. And came in, this was before transponders, and the timing sheets had me on pole in front of some Formula Atlantic cars, which should have been seconds quicker. And the times, it was like, first thing we did is straight to timing and scoring and go, this is wrong. We didn't go this fast.
Right.
And they said, well, we've got it on 3 or 4 different stopwatches, and that's your time. So I started my very first national event on the pole in front of all of the Formula Atlantic cars. And
They must have been thrilled.
pucker factor. So I blew the start, let those guys all go by me, and had a good race with the previous national champion most of the event, and I ended up winning my first national. And then Sunday I was leading when I broke the shift lever and was able to finish the race by grabbing the shift rod and
Wow.
using it. It didn't have a lever on it, but I could grab the rod and pull it forward and push it back and
So it's not
rotate
like
it.
just the knob broke, the whole handle broke.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's attached to a lever that has a rod that goes back to the transaxle. And so by the time I figured that out, about 5 cars got by me, and I passed 4 of them back. And going to the runoffs, that year I missed qualifying. I was the first alternate, and we went to Mid-Ohio chasing points. Because if I could have finished in the top 10, I think in Mid-Ohio, I would have qualified to go to the runoffs. And we were, at that time, I was building the motors for both my dad's car and my car.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not an engine builder.
Well, I was just going to say, I haven't heard anything about your mechanical
Yeah.
ability. You're not painting the motors, are you?
Hey, I tuned for Derek. I got him around the
Oh,
racetrack.
yeah.
Nothing fell off.
Yeah, now. What happened in the early 20s here, or the 20 years of age? What's going on there?
I really wasn't an engine builder, but I could read instruments and I could put things together.
It was all to keep costs down too, I'm sure. Yeah.
So I got an engine block back from the grinder the morning we had to leave. And I assembled the motor, threw it in the race car, couldn't get it to fire. Played with the timing, played with everything. And I'm looking at the watch going, if I don't leave in the next hour, I'm going to miss the race. Because I had to drive from Colorado to Ohio.
Now, is this just you, or is your pops running with you, or what's going on with that? Because
I have my dad's race car, my race car, the trailer, other stuff we're taking out for other racers. He's flown into Ohio.
must be nice.
Yeah. That's he did pay the bill, so we
okay.
got that. So
He's the driver. He's got the mechanic working on stuff. So yeah.
That's got people for that.
So I'm by myself. I call a friend and say, hey, what are you doing this weekend? He said, nothing. I said, great, you're coming to Ohio with me. So I call the local restaurant, which happened to be a bar, and said, make us some sandwich and a pot of coffee. We'll be by in a minute. And we drove by, loaded the cooler, and off we went, headed to Ohio with just enough time to get there. In the process of driving out there, we had 2 blowouts on the trailer. To get to the spares, you had to unload everything out of the trailer. It's in the belly of the so
Get
I'm
out.
on the side of the
Oh my
freeway
God.
with race cars out on the freeway. You know, we blew out a 2-ton jack trying to get the trailer in the air and had to build a ramp and get it up to break the wheels loose. The second blowout, I pull the spare out and it's a bias ply spare. So prepared. We were prepared.
For those kids at home, what is a bias ply spare?
It's an old school way that they used to manufacture tires. It's not a radial. It's nothing you would even know about in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it didn't work very well, and it proceeded to blow out at about 150 miles further down the freeway. So we limped into some small town, and I blocked the bays at a tire store with the trailer because I had a dually with a 40-foot gooseneck trailer, so we took up some space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I blocked all the bays, and we slept in the truck. So when the guys got there to go to work, they had to wake us up to move. So they woke us up, and it's like, hey, we need a tire. So they threw a tire on, and we kept driving. And we pull into Ohio at the front gate, and as I drive up and jump out to figure out where we need to go.
How far is the drive? Sorry, from Colorado to Ohio?
22 hours.
Jesus, man.
Ish. I don't know, 20 hours.
Yeah.
Pulling the trailer.
Smoothly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and pulling that big trailer, we didn't get very far. The dually sucked gas.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of one of those, you had to drive at 60. You could drive at 75 or 80, but the fuel stops would make up for the time you were making up at speed.
Right.
So trying to stay awake, we'd do all the math. Do we speed up 10 miles an hour and lose 2 miles per gallon? So I pull up. The lady at the booth goes, "You must be Taylor. There are a lot of people looking for you." And I went, "Yeah," because this was before cell phones and everything. And even if we could have used a payphone.
Oh, shit, because you got Dad's car and stuff like that. He's like, son.
Where's the car at?
So my dad had rented
Damn, engine builders.
Formula Ford 2000.
What am I paying this guy for?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate this.
Meanwhile, he had a smooth flight. I mean, worst thing that happened is they gave him the kosher meal, right? So.
He had there was a team at the track that had a spare car, and he rented it. So he went out and qualified, ran the test days or test sessions, and qualified. And I think he qualified third or something. And
what was he running?
He was running the Super V, which was in what they call it, Formula C, I think, and Formula Ford 2000 ran in the same class. So he rented a Renard Formula Ford 2000, which was a good car at the time. It wasn't a Swift, which was the car to have, but it was a good car.
Were those kind of the two to choose from, or was there more?
There were more, but Renard really had a kind of went through about 2 years where they were the king, and then when the Swift came out, the Swift just cleaned up, and if you didn't have a Swift, you were running for first in class behind them.
Wow.
And I was fortunate enough to drive a Swift for half a season. It was fun. We had a great time. So his race car, the Ralt Super V's in the trailer. We show up. They tell him he can start last in his race car, or he can start third in the rental car. It's like,
Gee, let me think.
Yeah.
I'll go third. So
what kind of chassis was his? In the
a
trailer?
It's a Ralt.
Okay,
Ralt,
gotcha.
Ralt Super V. And it was a pro car. It came out of the Super V series. The rules were a little different. Had to change the fuel injection to carburetors to run at the club level, but it was the same car. So he decided to race the rental car, and I went to the chief steward and race director and said, I've never had a lap around here, but I'd really like to race tomorrow. And so they gave me 3 hardship laps Sunday morning, and I started 43rd in a 43-car field. And you couldn't even see the flag stand from where I was as the green came out.
They're doing it on that Mid-Ohio, that kind of backstretch. It's not even straight. It kind of is that where they're doing the green at that time?
We got the start on the front at the finish line.
You did get the proper
so
one.
we're coming out of I was still in the carousel when the green came out.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah, it's a rolling start.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the locals said, you're far enough back. The green's going to come out when you're probably right here. I'd just start racing. So I think I passed 10 cars on the first lap and raced my way up. There was another car that had to start in the back that was a good driver, and the two of us just picked people off all the way through. And we were in the mid-teens when I cracked a header and lost my top end, but I was still able to stay with everybody. And then I had a flat, left front flat. Coming down that back straight where you have the right-hander to the left-hander up over the bluff.
Right.
Yeah. That turn, by the way, you get airborne coming
On
over
the up over?
Yeah.
Wow.
And iRacing, because that's the only experience I have at Mid-Ohio, the car gets light right there for sure.
Even in a Formula Ford, the thing would get light.
Wow.
It was the first vertical turn I'd ever had in a race car, and it was just woo.
Yeah.
That was fun. But I went off at the end of that back straight before the right-hander.
Those
Turned in, and the thing left front went flat and just straight off.
Hopefully
those
it
damn
wasn't
spare tires.
the bias
Same
splice.
one from the
That was a
trailer.
bias fly. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it wasn't raining at the time. How far did you make it through the grass right there?
Clear off to the other side of I came back on after the
Oh, wow.
rise. Yeah. So, and I drove into the pits, and I was really a turd as a racer. It was emotional, threw temper tantrums. I was a brat.
Oh, so it carried straight into kit cart dad status.
Exactly.
It sounds like.
I was a natural. I was a natural. So I can't come into the pits, and I get out of the race car, and there are guys there, and they want to work on the car and stuff. And I've got a grin. I'm smiling. My dad's there, and he's ready for me to throw my helmet. And it's like, oh, that was so much fun. I had such a good time. I mean, come on, I passed 30 cars.
Yeah.
I mean, how could that not be fun?
It's the best DNF you've got.
Best DNF I've ever had.
That was the
Wow.
same thing we talked about with Hayner, right? When he went down to Florida and he had, he had all his DQs. He goes, didn't get the finish, but that was a hell of a lot of fun starting from the back, picking up one car at a time.
Well, it's funny. I was talking with Cameron, who's been working with younger drivers.
Yeah.
And he's trying to instill that race day mindset. Quit looking at the finished results. That's not your scorecard.
Yeah.
It really isn't your scorecard. And as soon as you quit focusing on that, everything else, the craft will come. And that's something that I don't think I've ever learned.
Nice. So that nationals that was actually to try to get into the runoffs there. Doesn't go the way you want it to, but hell of a lot of fun. Is that maybe the pinnacle or the your favorite moment in car racing, or did you have anything else? Like, and how old were you at the time, and how far or how long did you go car racing there?
I think I was still 21. I think it was my first year.
Oh, wow.
It was a rookie year, and then we raced some the year after. But racing is expensive, and I had no money, and Dad quit spending money. I think that he was more building a new company, and that took his focus. So he kind of backed out of it for a while. He got back into racing later after I'd moved out here.
Okay, so what... You stop racing over there, you know, money dries up, if you will, or like the priorities change. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this or can't do this.
Yep.
So you stop racing. So then, what makes you go to California?
Chasing a girl.
Oh,
Realized it was a bad decision. Already had the plane ticket, so I flew out and was here about 17 hours when we got in a truck and trailer and towed a race car to Road America.
Hold on a second.
I feel like you're leaving something out.
Yeah.
The only connection I had in California was a race team, RPM Motorsports, that was a Super V team that had actually gotten some guys at Indy back in the 80s. And we knew the owner from a family friend. My best friend growing up, sister, was married to the guy. And that's actually where we ended up with a Super V. In a trade that the team wanted a car that my dad had. He had restored an old Pantera, and
Nice.
Yeah, and it was really nice. Louis Unser built the motor for it. It was sweet. Anyway, he wanted the Pantera, and he had this, last season's Ralts. It was a professional race team, and at the end of the year, you bought next year's cars and sold this year. And he knew that I was racing and actually was trying to put me in the seat and have Dad pay the bills. Dad got in the race car and said, I like racing again.
This fits me way better.
Yes. I think I want to do this again. So
How old was your dad around that time?
41.
Okay.
And as a 41-year-old, when we went to the pro race, everybody at part of the deal in getting the car, the team would run him at the Champ Car, the kart, CART, event where Super Vs were the
They're like the lights, if you were the run up.
And it was Road America, long straights. And my dad came in and said, "Yeah, we can pull some wing out of this." And they're like, "Yeah, old man, don't worry about it. We'll keep you safe." And it's like, yeah, I think we really should pull some wing out of it, and we could do this, and we could do all these other things. And they really treated him like, hey, you're a rich guy. He wasn't, but you're a rich guy.
You said it was a pro race.
Yeah.
How, why? Like, can you just sign up for this, or is this like an upper rung from an SCCA
Oh yeah,
group?
no, it's upper rung.
And you just enter with this other But
you had to have a pro license, and you had
Okay.
to, be signed off and all that.
so out of curiosity, then, I mean, if he's got the pro license and like that,
Mm-hmm.
why would, because of his age purely?
Because
And-
well, there were a lot of other quote rich guys. It's a lot like karting is now. You've got a big team, you've got a couple of paid drivers, and then you've got the guy that's sweeping up the shop, covering as much as he can, that goes out and wins races, so that you can get the attention to bring more guys that are going to pay under the tent,
I got
kind of a thing.
Right.
And so they treated him like one of those guys, and he qualified 16th or something. But again, we're back. This was back with 30 car pro fields. It was huge, super. That was really the only place to go race. Now there's everything, kind of like karting. And I think he came out of turn one in 4th or 5th. By the end of the first lap, he was in the single digits, right on the teammates, wing.
Not one of the paid drivers.
He actually paid too, but
He was
How
one of the
much?
better ones.
but it was anyway. And he was pushing me. He's like, I'm quicker, but do I pass him? Because they're in it for a championship. I'm here just to play. And he's dicing with Davy Jones and the Brens and all the front runners at the time. And they ended up hurting the motor. He had missed a shift in a practice session 2 days prior, and those motors were a little bit fragile. And had he been a front-running driver, they would have put a new lump in
Sure,
it
yeah.
for Sunday, but
Yeah.
they didn't. So he ended up breaking a cam while running 5th, I think. His debut pro race. But he had his FIA pro license in the 60s when he raced, back then.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of, and like I said, he had his pilot's license. He flew aerobatics. I mean, it was just who he was. And he was always, in fact, later, remember when Kart and IRL had their little tiff?
Yeah.
And you
Their
had
little
that,
tiff that lasted for many, many years.
the 1 year where there was Indy, where it was really kind of an iffy Indy. And
Yeah.
Buddy Lazier won.
Yeah.
Buddy Lazier, Colorado boy, raced with us back in the day. Jacques raced against my dad that same weekend at a
Oh, wow.
race in Colorado at Pueblo in Formula V's, which, no power, no brakes, no nothing. It's like Superboxer LO206 racing.
Yeah.
And, he and Jacques diced for the whole race, and had a great time. He goes, yeah, I beat Lazier on Memorial Day weekend. That was cool.
Nice.
But he had the reputation, guys would put him in the race cars all through, and he was in his 60s and still racing.
Wow.
Yeah. And in fact, he got to go do the 24 Hours of Daytona and Sebring.
But before we get onto that,
Oh, sorry.
the
We're back. I never got out of California.
We're actually still in the air. We're trying to get
Oh, yeah.
there from Colorado.
So, what was the? Do you happen to know how the tone was when your dad came back to the pits that weekend when he broke?
Oh, you're talking the Road America one.
Yeah.
The team I knew most of the guys because I worked with them. That's part of coming out to California. I worked with them later, and a couple of them were really disappointed that they hadn't paid attention, to what my dad was asking for,
Yeah.
and hadn't really realized that he could, hump a race car around a racetrack. So it wasn't, they didn't have their hat in their hand, but a couple of them realized that they had made a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's racing. Too
Right.
late at that point. In fact, the runoffs that we went to, the same team ran him at the runoffs, the one that I didn't qualify for. And he was leading handily, and we broke a fitting in the spark box and lost basically the power wire to the coil.
Oh,
And it
get
was like,
out.
Dude.
And that was really cool. Paul Newman had a driver that was running in the Super V class, the Formula C, and under Newman's own and everything else. And Paul was racing in his, Datsun or Nissan, but I can't think of what class it was. But, the big sedan, big motor, fast, the stuff he raced in Trans Am. And we would see Paul Newman in line at the bratwurst on his scooter, and he says, "Hey, how's your dad doing?" It's like, because that was his competition.
Right.
And so in fact, our mechanic would play cards in the trailer with Paul Newman in downtime, and Paul was all over the pits and talking to everybody. He was a racer. Then spectators showed up, and he couldn't get out of the trailer, the motorhome, if he wasn't in the race car.
Right.
And it was really sad because he was just one of us. It was really cool. But anyway, his driver was quick, and the two of them had a little battle for a while. My dad kind of gapped him, and he'd been dropping a front wheel getting into turn one, but it was just the line. And I figured he'd flattened it because he'd get a little poof of dust. And they brought him in, and it ended up being just, we soldered all those fittings back then, and it broke at the end of the solder where the vibration point would be, even though it was all soldered, all shrink wrapped, everything you can think of not to have it break.
Man.
But we did all of that. That kind of sucked. But so when I came out to California,
Oh, yeah. California.
the only guy I knew was the guy that ran the team principal of RPM Motorsports. And he was about to take a race car for Mike Fulmer back to Road America for the Super V race at Road America. And he said, "You want to come along?"
Yeah, I got
Nothing
nothing
to do.
else going on.
So we drove out to Wisconsin. We ran the race. We're driving back and going through Colorado to drop me off. He offers me a job. Took me about 12 seconds. I said, "Sure." So we stopped. I went in and grabbed my toolbox out of the shop, grabbed a couple of trash bags, put all my clothes in it, left a note for my brother to sell my furniture and send me the money. I'm moving to California.
Yeah.
Off I went.
That's like from a movie. That's awesome.
Man.
So I went
And what year is that?
87, 88.
Been here ever since?
So I came out and worked at a race shop for a team that the owner had some issues and ended up folding. And that's when I met Lydia at a party. We just showed up at the beach at a party, and it was Lydia and her roommate's party. And
This is your now wife.
my now
Yeah.
wife, and she didn't like me. We didn't get along. But I needed a place to stay, so I slept on her couch. Well, I was living.
Gave you time to convince her otherwise.
I was,
Yeah. This
What?
is happening, lady.
whether you like it or not, I'm here, and I'm not leaving.
Turns out.
So anyway, that kind of cuts to that story. But no, I worked with the race shop. We had fun. We restored some old race cars and didn't really do much of anything. He had some issues that just brought everything down and ended up folding. And I was kind of in limbo.
And you had actually mentioned earlier, though, that when you had come over here, you had already started kind of doing the painting thing. Was that right after this then?
When I was in college, that's how I supported myself, was painting for a large painting contractor.
Then you move over here, and, well, you still know how to do that, so.
Yeah. So what happened with that, Lydia had a friend who had a painting company.
Oh,
and I
get
was
out of here.
mooching off of her couch and eating her food.
Wait, all right. Now, she doesn't like you,
No.
but you need a place to stay, so she's like begrudgingly letting you stay there, and then begrudgingly giving you an opportunity, and then begrudgingly marrying you, and then
Pretty much. You've met her, right? My friend that I knew from the guys at the race shop was kind of in the same boat. He was in construction and he blew his knee out, and he was a framer, so he couldn't walk around on second stories any longer. So he was pretty much, out of work. I was out of work. The team principal married somebody, got in a car and drove to Indy to hang out with his racer friends. So the two of us were living in his house. They'd already, boarded up the race shop.
Yeah.
We had no money. I got good at making a pot of potato soup last an entire week because potatoes are cheap. And Lucky Loggers, they come in 11 ounces, and they've got a little puzzle on the lids.
Lucky Loggers. No, I don't.
Beer,
Okay.
cheap.
Never
Cheap
heard
beer.
of it, yeah.
Yeah, Lucky Loggers.
So you get to drink and stay busy with the puzzles.
That's it. That's it. So, and that's how a friend of his knew somebody that was going to the party at Lydia's house, and that's how we showed up. and we basically never left. My friend ended up marrying her roommate,
Oh, wow.
and our mutual friend married their other roommate, and we're all still married.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
And Lydia really didn't want to date me because my friend Gary and her roommate Heather were dating, and it could have been tension if, my friend and her roommate get in a fight.
Someone ends up not liking each other. Yeah.
So that she really fought going out with me forever.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we start our Love Connection podcast,
Jeez.
we're going to start with Taylor Jocelyn.
Call me Dr.
That
Drew.
is phenomenal.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Get
Dr.
you on the
Drew.
show.
Uh-huh.
That is crazy. Man,
so-
oh man. So now you're in California, and
We've made it to California, and it's 88.
what obviously Lydia you guys end up getting married and whatnot, you end up having kids and what. Where does racing start to come back into play? Because you were working for a race shop.
Yeah.
You're not doing that anymore. You end up doing the painting thing, and I assume hiatus now starts to happen with the racing thing.
Yeah. At this time, my brother is racing. He's a professional mountain biker
Oh wow, this is in Colorado.
in Colorado. Yeah. And in fact, he was a Kawasaki factory racer, and amongst others. And the factory came to him and said, you really can't get hurt, so we really don't want you riding motorcycles. And he was a motocrosser. He did supercross, motocross stuff anyway. And he had a YZ250 race bike that he now contractually can't ride. So
I know a guy.
Big Brother ends up with this race bike. So, and
He took the money that he sold the furniture for, and he just took that, shipped you the bike.
That's it. So, I bought the bike from him and went racing. And really funny, Paris Racing Complex had a racetrack. I don't know if it's still there, but it was a supercross track called Star West. And I would go out there and ride and race. And my first time I got Lydia to come watch me race, I go out and I pull the whole shot. I lead the first lap, come around.
Sorry, how long have you guys been together at this point? Is it still pretty early in the game, or
3 or 4 years because we had both kids.
Okay, so
But they were babies.
You took about 3-4 years off.
Yeah.
That's it. But then you start getting back in to get this bike.
I was building my contracting company.
Right, exactly. So now
So it
you
wasn't
get back
even-
into it.
It wasn't even planned for you to go racing again.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
No,
this
opportunity.
Right,
It
yeah.
knocked. I was there.
I like it.
and I remember how to do this. I was 5 when I did it last.
So, and we rode.
They
at
say
some
it's like
point
riding
forever.
a bike. You can't forget.
Just kinda. So I come in after the heat race, and my lovely wife goes, Taylor, I thought you told me you were pretty good at this.
Didn't you say you got the whole shot? You did say you got the whole shot.
I
right?
did.
Led the first lap.
Led the first lap.
I may have cut you off
Okay.
for you tell me how.
Well, the big double down the front straight, I didn't jump. Okay. I rolled it.
Oh, no.
And 2 or 3 guys would pass me, and I would pass them back, and then I'd roll it. And 2 or 3 guys would pass me
So why
And I
were you
passed it back.
rolling it?
because it was a long way across.
Dude, remember
and I was
when
old
he-
enough. I know how it feels when you hit hard.
Okay, yeah,
And
fair
remember,
enough.
all of his experience was on the little 60.
Yeah.
Okay, they didn't jump nothing.
He's like, bikes have come a long way, boys.
I was the fastest guy not clearing the big double.
Oh man.
So anyway, so that became the running joke. And
Where'd you end up finishing?
second,
Nice.
yeah,
Oh wow.
And she
So-
still says, I thought you were good at
yeah,
this.
wasn't that awesome?
He was really
Talk
good
about
at the,
support.
really good at the technical stuff.
That's awesome.
So you come in and you have no support from
Nope.
the wife.
Nope.
That was a heat race. You still had a main to
the
go.
kids didn't even watch. They were playing in the sand.
Yeah.
Of course, they were 1 and 3 or something like that. So
Expect better of him.
I did that for a season or 2, and
Rolling jumps.
I did that also. Yeah. So one morning I got up and went to Castaic, which had a supercross track by Castaic Lake. And I woke Lydia up and said, hey, I'll be back in a couple hours. I left at 4:30. I'm just going to go do a workout, go ride for a couple hours. I'll be right back. And she's going, I really don't want you to go ride. She had an overnight bachelorette party going on that night in San Diego. I said, I'll be back. Don't worry about it. So I go up and have this little tip over, break like 4 ribs, and
I love how casual you are about this because it's so much of Cameron with everything that he talks about. So
Yeah.
you really are his father.
yes, I am. So anyway, I end up in the hospital in Castaic, and all the nurses, I'm telling them, I've got to get home. I've got a new baby. Shelby's, a baby, and my wife's got plans. And I had a couple of the nurses ready to come to Southern California to babysit. They were ready. So anyway, I had to call the wife, and she had to get somebody to follow her up there or to drive her up there so she could drive my truck back.
Where's Castaic? Sorry, I don't know.
Magic Mountain.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2 hour and 45 minutes north
Yeah.
from where I was at the time. And so they go up there, they put me in the back of a Suburban and drive me home.
Lydia was going to put you in the truck bed, actually.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was. Fortunately, the guys that drove her up were nicer than she was. And, I hear him broken ribs in my back, 4 of them. Oh. And Monday morning, she made me get up and go to work. I couldn't move.
That'll learn you.
I know. I drove to the end of the street and slept in my truck.
Smart. Hey, how was work today? Oh, it was great.
Oh, good. I think I'm fine. So anyway, that was the end of my motorcycles for the time being, and I ended up buying a go-kart.
It's amazing how many people come from 2 wheels to 4 wheels, and it's from motorcycles to go-karts.
What was where and what was the first cart you bought? Where'd you get it from?
I had a client that I was painting for that had a company called One Less Than 2 Limited. Mark. Anyway, he had a Fullerton. He had a couple of Fullertons, and it was funny. I paid way too much for the go-kart. Mm-hmm. It had an HPV on it, a KPV now. But when I went to pick it up, it was like, well, here, you're going to need some chains. And he opens up his toolbox and hands me a stack of 15 chains. And, and he gave me, every other gear and a driver's suit. And, it was just kind of cleaning out his garage.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was nice. So I raced that.
What year is that? You get this cart and you start going racing?
Probably 89.
Yeah.
Was it
88.
something? Was it something you had your eye on, or did you just kind of?
You wanted to keep racing, and Lydia wasn't going to have this no motorcycle.
She was against the 2 wheels.
Well, and I'd already tested an Indy car. I'd driven all these Formula cars and sedans. I was a racer. How hard can karting be? Little did I know.
And where did you go racing?
At that time, Paris was the big, catch. That was where everybody, was.
Is that the same place as where you were doing the motocross stuff?
Yeah.
So did you happen to see karts at all when you were doing the motocross thing back then? Like, did you when you saw the go-kart, did you know what that was and where that goes and so on and so forth?
I wasn't paying attention at that time. My godfather, back in the early years, I had to be 5 or 6, in Kansas, had that original Yamaha go-kart that Yamaha did with the KT motor on it, and they built their own chassis. I don't think it was ever driven, but it was in the basement. So whenever we went to visit, I'd go sit in the go-kart all day. Yeah,
That's neat.
Well, and then they were all racing something, around then. That's when my dad was heavy into the SCCA stuff. So I knew what go-karts were, but shoot,
it was just a go-kart too.
I'm a real race driver.
Right.
Yeah. Little did I know. So we started racing. Lydia started going to the races. We did a bunch of stuff at Paris. Got Cameron into kid karts.
Was she working the races?
No,
not yet. She help hanging out with you?
Yeah.
And the kids?
Mm-hmm. So we did Paris. We did Adams. Ran Tri-C. We did all the stuff in San Diego with Imago and El Cajon. Mm-hmm. Raced San Diego karting when it was big, SDKA. And back then, you could run 3 races a weekend. You could do Tri-C Saturday nights and go to Imago
That's
Sunday
what Matt
morning.
was saying. They'd go from Paris to Adams, over a weekend.
Oh yeah, it was, and they worked together. You could do Paris Saturday and El Cajon Sunday. It was easy. It wasn't easy,
Yeah, but
it was doable.
The scheduling worked out where you could make that happen. Now, we obviously had Cameron on the show, and he talked considerably about what he did and whatnot as a munchkin, and obviously you were racing in those early parts of his racing. Mm-hmm. But what, in just your racing, not as a tuner, but as you as a driver, how did those things? Okay, this is easy. I got this. How did it actually go? And then how did it transfer from holy shnikes, this is harder than I thought, to where did you end up? And it sounds like you did all right.
The first real race I ran, I got lapped on the white flag lap, and the reality set in that this is harder than it looks.
Was that the worst you had done in a competition at that point? I mean, really? Because it sounds like up to this point you're doing pretty damn good just about everything you get in.
Yeah.
You get in a karts and
pretty much.
Do I even know how to drive anymore?
Exactly. It was like, oh, what is this? And it was just trial and error. I mean, I raced for a season without even knowing you could change the rear width.
Wow.
We just ran what you ran. You just showed up, and
this is how I bought it.
if it wasn't going fast, you were doing something wrong. So I went through all of that learning curve, how to drive around things, and started getting more competitive. Just by trial and error. I had no clue what I was doing. Because again, we were running out of the back of a pickup. I could get Cameron's kid cart and my cart and an easy up and a toolbox and both stands, and off we'd go.
How long were you doing karting for before you got Cameron in one?
Pretty quick.
Because you started in the kid karts, and at this point,
let's see, 93. Yeah, it would have been probably the first season.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was 5, so he would have been 88. So 89, it was right there. Mm-hmm. When I first started, would have been about the same time. In a kid kart where, at that time they were running for participation trophies, and nobody took it seriously in the beginning. It got serious by the time we were ready to move to cadet, but in that time it was pretty easy. And then, we ran the local club level stuff, and then when the Region 7 tour would come through, if they ran at a track that we raced club at, I'd race with those guys. And, I was top 5 guy with the touring guys.
So what kind of stuff were you racing back then?
Well, back then, the only classes for seniors over 16, they didn't have masters back then, so you were racing the 16-year-old kids. At the IKF level were HPV 3 and HPV 4. It's a piston port, different pipes. And back then, the 3 had a limit of 50 inches at the rear, and you ran 6.0 tires. And the 4 could go to 55, and you ran 7.10s and a different pipe. So there was a little bit, but we ran the same motor, just put a different pipe on it and narrowed the cart or whatever. But that was the class that I could race. They didn't have shifters at the time. Club level had some Yamaha stuff. Back then, there was Yamaha pipe and Formula Y, which was the direct drive pipe on the Yamaha. And that's about it.
Do pretty good in those things?
At the local level, yeah, I was competitive, won a few races, never won a championship, set some track records, had a lot of fun, doing that. When we went to do Region 7 stuff, those guys were a step up. I mean, it was kind of like karting is now at the club level. They were much more prepared. One of the neat things is I ran against, throughout that one season, there are probably 9 guys. The field wasn't that big, but the 9 guys that were running in the top 10 were, any one of them can win the race.
That's awesome.
One of them drives our Indy cars today. Another one was a local hero in roundy round stuff. Actually, about 3 of them were, that kind of a thing. And I beat every one of those guys at one point throughout the season, and I would be in that 3rd to 5th kind of realm. And then I went shifter racing. Ran G1, which was open motor for old guys.
I was just gonna say that's one of the earlier Masters style classes.
Yep. So I raced the kids and all the clutch stuff. Then thought I was, manly. I was gonna go run a shifter because I'm a race driver.
How long did you do
that?
the? How long were you doing the single speed stuff for before you jumped in the shifter?
4 years, maybe.
Okay.
Serious for about 2 seasons, and then kind of ancillary for Cameron's sake.
Right. Yeah.
It was like when we did the nationals. First year we went up for the ICAF Grand Nationals in Washington at Richland, I think.
Yeah, Richland.
We were a small team in a small trailer with more crap packed in there than we could. And I went out and did the first practice session to learn the racetrack, set fastest lap, and then worked on Cameron's stuff until somebody got faster. So, I might skip 2 or 3 sessions and then just go back and I do it. And, that was such a fun weekend. We were underdogs. In fact, Ryan Perry pitted next to us as a driver.
Really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We had the cops come.
You had the cops come?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, there was kind of a riot. The race direction was so bad that, Scott.
I don't remember Cameron saying, because we've heard the Richland story.
Yeah.
I don't remember this in the Richland story.
You guys know Scott Gordier.
Yeah, Gordo from, I know he's done other stuff, but I know him from being here at LAKC as a race director.
He was Taylor Minch's mechanic, and there was a big crash. Track was blocked. Taylor ran around and ran into the pack, but there was nowhere to go. The race director doesn't red flag the race. Yeah, I mean, it's a complete fiasco. Gordo, who weighed 100 pounds more than he does now, about hurdled the fence to take out the starter to throw the red flag. Next thing you know, the cops are in our pit, and it's like, wait, nothing here, nothing to look at, nothing to see here.
You got Gordo stashed in the trailer, just hiding.
It was just
sheltering.
They were really, really over their head. We were used to Region 7, which ran like a touring professional series, and they had their club level people running the Grand Nationals. And it was like a, club race that's used to running 40 people now had 300 entries.
And they'd never seen a big ass crash like that before or something.
No,
huh?
They didn't have that many cars on the racetrack at once, let alone that. And lots of those things and lots of nepotism. I mean, it was, guys were getting calls because they were beating the local guy. I mean, it was that blatant.
Oh, man.
Sean of Go Racing wrote a whole article on how bad the officiating was. And for that to go out in a national publication, it had to be bad.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And that's when you're like, when I get done with this, I will when I am elected, I will.
So, but the cops came. That was just funny.
Wow.
Funny. But we had a great time. Brought home some hardware.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good.
And then after that, you do shifters.
After that, went to shifters and ran the SCCA series. That was.
Is it Promoto at that point, or is it proper?
Yeah, It might have been Promoto. It was before Tom took over. Tom was actually racing. I raced against Tom.
Oh wow!
Oh, cool. All right.
My last season. In fact, I think Tom won the championship in G1 that year, and I finished second to him. Never won a race, but
consistency.
Was always up there, yeah.
Genetics, I hear Cameron's a lot like that too.
He's a little like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Never win a race, but all right there. And we had a good time, and I was never in good enough shape, and all of that. Just old.
Well, that's because you were going out for one lap, waiting to see who'd go faster. You got to do some more
Exactly.
driving.
There is a little of that. There is a lot. So like I said, track records. Once led a bunch of big events. Never closed the deal, but the Momo Grand Prix out in the parking lot at the Irvine Spectrum was leading and just a little wide and caught a hay bale, and hay bales are so unforgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was a broken rib or two and wadded
I
up
love
go-kart.
that. I'm not sure if it's a meme or a phrase or whatever. And the never-ending battle between a go-kart, a 50 millimeter axle, and a hay bale. The hay bale will never lose.
Never. Oh, it's so funny. I crashed on the other side of the racetrack, and the cart just spun 10 times. And in the process, I broke the fuel cell. So there's fuel spilling out all over my feet, my legs, my driver's suit, and out. It's going onto the racetrack. So I grab a hay bale and try to mop it up so it doesn't get out on the racetrack, because it was like lap 5, and I didn't want to do it. And in the doing that, I slip on the fuel on the asphalt and fall down. Well, Lydia is clear across the racetrack and sees me get out of the cart and fall down. And so she thinks I'm really hurt. And it's like, no. And so then when the EMTs got there, they wouldn't let me stand up. It just, they thought I was really hurt. And it's like, no,
So
guys, I'm good.
I'm part of the janitorial crew, and
Yeah.
it's fine.
This helmet's for safety.
So
All right. I want to get into how you actually made the transition from being, dad, tuner, driver, and then just, going from that with Cameron to, and I know you guys also did the truck stuff and all
Right.
that. How did you make this transition? I know you talked about working with Edgar and whatnot, kind of. How, and I guess maybe the bigger thing, why? Why did you decide that I want to go? I mean, who did you say was the guy that was like, hey, I got an assistant for you? Was it Andy?
Andy.
Yeah. So, but how did you go? Yeah, all right.
I am stupid. I signed up to be yelled at every weekend for next to nothing. Actually, I think I filled in at Tri-C as a flagger, a starter.
So Cameron's racing at this point,
Yeah.
and you're not. He's
Yeah,
just
not,
doing
yeah.
it. So you're still wrenching?
Yeah, I was at the time, and I filled in. Lydia was there. Back in that time, Cameron, we would actually start last in those 20, 30 car fields at Tri-C at Moran. I'd only let Cameron start last if he qualified on pole.
Oh, interesting.
And
It's like
he-
a tune-up.
Yeah. And so, because we knew that the Nationals were going to be there. So we wanted to get used to passing on that track. So we did that for the whole season. And I think he won the championship.
What class is he in? Do you remember?
HPV 1, it was cadets.
Okay.
So all that stuff. Then when he made the transition to juniors, we were kind of in that same mode. We went national racing, and the clubs were old tires and fun. We were there to stay sharp and to play.
And you guys still had Kyle turn the wrenches at this point, or no?
No, Kyle had gone on and started working for his dad at that point.
Okay.
Yeah,
But were you the wrench for Cameron?
it was in the beginning, and then I turned it over to Lydia. So Lydia actually won 2 championships as a tuner
That's awesome.
for Cameron.
Get out of here!
Yep.
Why don't we have her on the show first? What the hell?
So
It would start from, I met this guy in California.
well, and
I hated him.
Yeah.
at that point, Cameron was doing more and more of his own stuff. But the two of them went out and won. I think they won, or they finished near the front. And I transitioned into helping.
Okay, yeah. So you filled in as a flagger. That was your very first on-track, other side of the fence
yeah.
experience.
No, when we raced at San Diego, part of being a part of the club was you needed to take off and work a corner during your race day.
Yeah, I actually had the same thing at Portland Karting Association when I was a
Interesting.
kid.
And-
or you had to work a cleanup day or something like that. Yeah.
That's how you qualified to get points at the end of the year. So I had some on-track stuff by doing that. When I coached sports cars back after I got my SCCA license, I helped at driver schools.
Oh, nice.
We did a lot of on-track stuff. So I was standing around out on the racetrack, and you could see, how cars approached and all that stuff, all trying to help the drivers, but you could also see things develop from back then.
For sure.
Just kind of, I filled in because they needed help. And the next thing you know, Andy grabs me and says, you need to work. We need you. And
So he had known that you'd already done these things from other stuff?
Yeah, maybe.
It wasn't a regular thing at this point.
No.
But he just saw you doing the one-time starter.
Oh, if he was at Tri-C, I did it for a whole season.
Oh, okay.
So, but it
Gotcha.
started as whoever was starting couldn't make it. I filled in.
Gotcha. You're the alternate.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
hopping around wherever they need help kind of thing.
Yeah. And then I just started the whole event
Did that
for the
for
next season. And then LAKC.
Was that at Moran?
Moran. Yeah.
Okay.
Then and I think I was the president of the club at that time. Mm-hmm. I think. I don't know. It was right around that time. Tri-C, yeah. And then when we moved here, I don't remember how I started with LAKC, but I did LAKC for 4 years, I think.
Yeah, you were doing it when I got here.
Yeah. And Chris, I think Chris and I, because of what Chris did as the president and what I did as on the racetrack, building that team, we built that into a 200 plus entry on a one-day event.
I remember the officiating crew being pretty damn good,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, you guys had, I want to say, Dylan Stalker was the flagger for a good amount once he quit
Dylan was
racing. And you.
And I had Mark.
Yep.
And I had Angel.
Yep.
And, you know, it was basically
a lot of the crew that is now a part of the challenge deal, yeah.
It was, I brought those guys with me when we did the LAKC stuff. And, you know, it was fun to try to build that program and try to rein it in, because there had been, you know, not a lot of consistency, you know, a lot of the trust factor between the racers and the officials was not there. And that took a season and a half to earn their trust. And then once we'd earned their trust, you know, we did things like we threw classes for the kid karters. I'd come out on Saturday and pull them all in, and we'd do classes on flags and how to get on the track and how to get off the track and those types of things. But also, you know, I stood up for the calls that my guys made when it was right. Mm-hmm. And when they could prove that it was wrong, we apologized. And I think that trust factor led to the success, the numbers.
Certainly a part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, as a driver, right, having faith that there's actually going to be officiating going on, it's not wild, wild west out there, is a big deal. Yeah. You know, if you go out to an event and you're like, it doesn't matter what happens, you better get in clean air, baby, because if you don't, you know, they're not going to make a call. And if as a driver, if I know there's not going to make a call, right?
Yeah.
Send it.
No. It's like if you know tech's not going to happen,
right?
You know,
what's
those
stopping
guys.
you? Yeah.
And, you know, I had the last year before I left, before that season, I had multiple team principals come to me and ask if I was going to stay on for the next year. And I said yes, and I did, but it was the last year.
Right. And you've been doing the Andy thing now for many years, right?
Many years.
Since Gators, right? Did you do much?
I think I did. I think I started at the end of the Gators deal as an assistant with Egger.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of when he actually retired. But it's been 4 years, 5 years, I think, that he's retired.
Yeah.
And I've been running it. But again, it's Casey, it's Mark, it's now Tyler. You know, that group, we all have the same mindset. Here's the thing. Whenever we make a call that's wrong, Mark and I will talk about it Tuesday the following week because it still bothers us.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll have the same issue with our iron drive stuff.
Yeah, and actually, with you being on, you also officiate with us when you can as a Super Series official. And as you know, I'll quarterback everybody, yourself, Derek and I, Darren, on Tuesday. Like, hey, I got some video. Or it's not even a change of a call. It's just I happen to spot something on video. This is dating back a couple of years. We've started doing it where we would look at video, see video from somebody's deal, and like, shit, I think we messed that up. And we use it as a learning experience or whatever. Now I can actually, I'll be able to make some changes or whatever. But it's because you give a shit though at the end of the day.
That's it. You know, we miss a call and somebody's race is ruined, somebody's day is ruined. You know, and we missed it, and that's our job, and that stuff bugs me. And when that stuff quits bugging me, I need to quit.
Right.
Because at that point, I'm going through the motions, and that's not fair to the racers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I'm still going back.
Sure.
Because, you know, there are a lot of guys that do this that are race officials, and some of them are really good. I don't think anybody's better than the crew that surround me. And I think the racers deserve what we give them. And I'm all for training somebody to take over. But until they can, I'm going to keep plugging away.
For sure.
I go back to being a racer. I want those calls made. You know, I want to know that it's going to be a clean race. And I know from being on the other side of the fence, you don't see it all.
Yeah.
You know, but if you see it, call it.
Yeah.
Stand behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the people who are doing arrive and drive shit, like say Darren Mercer, maybe starts coming out for a competition karting event. I mean, he is actually enjoying the officiating thing to a certain extent, right? But it's also because people he knows, and it's the sport he knows and shit. Right. I wonder if there could be that transitional, out of curiosity, I wonder if that would ever happen.
Well, I know for me, like, I've gotten so comfortable with doing events and stuff because of Arrive and Drive. I'd feel confident with moving up and trying something else. But yeah, I think the Arrive and Drive stuff has been a good step ladder.
I mean, yeah, you could absolutely do it. It's the same thing for me. Like, I started doing indoor events. Like, basically was at an indoor track, and it was like, hey, we're going to start a league or whatever. Who wants in? And I'm like, boom, I'm in.
Yeah.
Actually talking with the Kyle Hayner episode and talking about how I was running race series with the Hot Wheels on the mat.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I was I've always loved that thing, whatever it was. And so, yeah, I mean, going back to the officiating things, I did it and ran the event. I was the guy, and it was just me, no help, basically, and doing these events. It was like my pet project, indoor. And then it translated to outdoor when I started the National Indoor Karting Association. It only lasted a year or whatnot for various reasons. But then this was going on and so on and so forth. But officiating, and then at PGP, when I was doing that outdoor thing as well, I was also doing the race directing stuff for the local kart series that we had. It's basically the same stuff. And I think it's important to be a driver at some point so you understand how the karts work. In the racing and stuff like that. That's so important. I know there's probably in a decreasing amount, but there are officials that haven't raced, but they've watched only. I don't think there's very many, really, but the best ones. I mean, you have to have that, know how things work, and you just get better and better and better the more you do it. So going from sport karting to outdoor karting, it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna come down to confidence, really.
And Derek, you would fit right in with a little bit of coaching on how competition karting, how we approach what happens on the racetrack is different than the Arrive and Drive stuff.
For sure.
But it's, Casey fit right in. And, it's just a matter.
The groundwork is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we let that go, or this is a bigger issue, that kind of a thing. And that's just stuff that you go through. And one of the things that, when I'm a race director, I get the entire team together, and it's like, we are a team, and we need to act as a team. And if you see something different, you need to speak up.
Right.
And we need to discuss it. And if you can convince me, I'll back you 100% all the way. And I'll back you 100%. But if you can't convince me, we're going to go with my call. They're going to yell at me.
Right, yeah.
And it ends at the racetrack.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we saw it differently. We move on, go to the next one. Back when we had all of the politics at Cal Speed, and Rob and I were talking about continuing, one of the things we were going to do to get workers was set it up so that the sport kart guys could come work the competition events.
Which is what we did at that event, right?
Yeah. And
that's right.
Use that as credit towards their racing.
That's exactly what we did on that one race. Is we had Rodney Bryant and to be honest, Robbie Stanovich's dad, Robert.
That's right.
They were. I can't remember who else, but I remember those two guys out there.
Yeah, and they were great.
Yeah, and they gave a shit and were paying attention and whatnot. But yeah, to your point, maybe starts as a flagger.
Yeah.
And you start getting experience to it, and it's a good idea, and something I completely have forgotten that we had even done that. But that'd be a thing. I mean, we actually kind of do it already a little bit with the LAKC Saturday deal, where
Drew flaggers and stuff.
Yeah, Drew Zeller's been out here to help us out, and actually he was a flagger this last weekend for those guys. Not an official, but a flagger. But that's how you start, right?
Yeah.
You get around it, and again, Drew's raced and shit like that.
It fits right in.
Yeah.
No, and we do need to feed that officiating with younger talent. We've got to bring them in, because otherwise nobody's going to be out there.
It's going to be slim pickings in a few years
trying
to find people.
Strong point, because all right, you got yourself and you said Michonne,
Mark,
and then over at you have Bob English at Tri-C. I think Greg is the one over at LAKC. He's the main dude.
Who does SCCA have right now? It's
they got Neil Strickland. I mean, he's
on the younger side, so
you
get a while out of him.
But on the local level,
the local level for sure.
I mean,
Well, even when we were doing Florida Winter Tour and all the travel, most of those racetracks, they were old guys like me back then. And it's been, 10 years since we did that, or 5.
I think that's probably the tougher deal. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
At the regional level, you think about you're doing, well, Neil's doing a lot. He's doing these regions. He's doing Texas. He's doing national. He's doing all of them. So a lot of races still. Right, 100%. Well, actually,
that's just work.
Yeah.
To that point, Neil's just posted I think he was just saying, hey, I just got home sweet home. The last time he was there was July 5th.
Yeah, he just got back there.
And then he's there for a short period of time, and then boom, he's going to be in Indiana for 3 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the gig.
It's the life. In fact, Lydia and I were talking about it. This would be a lot of fun if we were retired and in a motorhome, and you just drive to the race, work it, spend the next 2 weeks driving to the next race and vacation.
Especially if you could do it in the scoring tower looking at TV monitors. That'd be a little nicer now, wouldn't it?
Air conditioned.
You'd actually just do it from the RV.
It's a new world.
Yeah,
it's a new world.
You could forget you don't have to be there. Just Zoom this thing. He's going to officiate from home.
But no, it's interesting you say it, Taylor, because I've been, I'm thinking 5-10 years down the road when Mike eventually starts changing his role here, and
5-10 years.
So
yeah, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. But I try to go into that role. Someone tries to move into mine, and that's just here. But yeah, the clubs are a big deal too. With there's not a lot of officials out there, and there's a hell of a lot. There's not a lot of people willing to even try it.
It's such a thankless job. You are the one that gets yelled at all the time.
Yeah.
And in every situation, there's somebody that's going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's both of them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And I've learned just from doing open practice, you're never going to make everyone happy. You can't please everybody, right?
Well, we talked about it with Darren actually at one point in that show that as an official, there's a lot of times where there's gonna be a lot of pissed off people. You get a hell of a lot more of the I'm unhappy about something than you do the hey, thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to hear those a little bit more often.
You've got to know the sport, you've got to know the rules, you've got to know the players, and be able to, stand up for what you see, and be able to stand up and say, I missed it.
Yeah.
And you're never making anybody happy. Ever. When I was Mr. Bad Dad and would scream at race directors all the time and throw temper tantrums and pout and punch the trailer, that was me. At the end, especially Region 7, at the end of the event, I would always find, at that time it was Don Moormeister was the race director. I'd always find Don and say, you're an ass, but thanks for coming out. We don't agree on half the stuff you called today, but I'm glad you were here.
Right. Well, and actually, not to throw anybody under the bus, but Max DeMoss,
right,
has been critical at times and whatnot, and credit to him. Even if it's been a bad day, and by bad day I mean in our interactions, which to be fair is a hell of a lot less often than it used to be.
Yeah.
He's been one of those guys that would come up and be like, "Hey, thanks," for regardless of how it goes down. Appreciate you guys being here because it gives us an opportunity to go racing in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to is that you can want to race all day if no one's going to put the bloody thing on, and that's not just registration, right? That's the people on course. Then you're SOL.
Well, and then you go a step further. Those that are putting it on, the promoters, it's either a club with a bunch of volunteers,
right, or
it's a promoter that's staked their own capital on trying to make a profit. You've got all of these people out there that are doing it because they love it, not because they're getting rich. I mean,
100%.
Well, and it's like you said too. You mentioned earlier. When you're at a challenge race, you're losing money. So that's the gist of it right there. Right, you're out here because you enjoy doing it. Right, and those people are few and far between.
Yeah, well, I guess that's part of the issue, right? We got to try to figure out how to get some more and whatnot.
Well, and like Casey, like I said, we'd love to have him at every race, and like I say, he fits right in. He's part of the team. He could take over any role of any of us on the racetrack, but he wants to go race,
or wants to go make money as a coach or whatever. So we're going back to you have your own business and stuff like that. This is a thing you do on the side,
right?
So you have your own business. I mean, thankfully you have the ability to, take time off and set aside these dates to go do this. But, anybody who has a situation where they could go make money at a race event. So Casey and Kate,
Cameron.
you have to, exactly. You have to not make money that weekend, or I should say, make less money potentially as an official than you would as a tuner, a coach, etc. And so to get that new blood, they either got to be a shit tuner or
a fool.
Or something else. To your point, honestly, maybe it really comes down to parents, of drivers that they've moved on, they've done different things, and now, I still want to be involved, but this is how I can do it, or whatever. Hey, maybe that's the way it is.
Maybe it is. And, again, tapping like the Arrive and Drive guys, I like that idea. I liked it when Rob and I talked about it because they're involved. They like racing, obviously. Most of them don't have the budget to go do anything else or time, but being able to hang out at the racetrack and watch racing and be a part of it could be enough of a carrot to get some of them to sign up.
Yeah, it's an idea.
So actually, because you're saying that, the thought I've always had was, this. You especially, and we've all seen the new generation of drivers come into the Arrive and Drive stuff. There's been a lot of different helmets over the last few years.
Right.
The big thing I've always wanted to show these new ones is perspective. And the one idea I had was having, inviting them out to try C or whatever.
Right.
To see that, like you were telling me, we can let that stuff go. That's not
seeing how it's done differently.
Exactly. Yeah. So seeing the difference in the way calls are made and all that kind of stuff, but
and some of them are already getting that perspective on the sport karting side. We'll have Chris Huerta or Sean fight these guys at the sprint series because they can't race in it, right? They'll come and hang out in the sprint series, and actually Chris is an official for us there for sprint only.
I didn't know that.
Does it in trade for the Tin Man later in the day. So there's already a little bit of that going on, but there's a hell of a big difference between driving and officiating. And that was, that's how Casey got his start with sport karting, right? Honestly. So you kind of scratch that itch or figure that stuff out first before moving on up, like you had said, Derek.
Yeah, I think, and the competition karting, I've never officiated, but just from spectating, it's a lot more black and white, in terms of, I think the big stuff.
Because
I don't think it's as close.
The call is not necessarily black and white, in my opinion, but a lot of shit takes care of itself. So before you even need to actually make a call, the actual interaction between the go-karts usually kind of take care of themselves.
Right.
So I'd say that when you do have to make a call, it could be about as tough as anything else. Not
to downplay any of it, but they're a little bit more spread out. It's instead of a pack of 15 carts that we'll have at Super. Wow. It all depends.
It's not a 15 lap turn one like sometimes you'll have with sport cars.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I'm with you there. I understand
that's
what
the big thing I'm trying to get across.
But
so when challenge is here, Derek's going to be on track with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to take him under my wing.
I'll be holding a yellow. That's all.
I'm going to be showing him some stuff because it's easy. It's black and white.
Oh jeez.
Oh man, about fair play, baby.
Has there been any officiating that you've done overseas?
No.
No, okay.
But I worked with those guys.
Gotcha.
So that might be it because I worked with
like you had mentioned earlier, Nigel from the CIK.
Nigel Edwards, and then when we were at NOLA, the way that whole program worked, everybody that was on track were the local race officials, race directors from their own division. So, like Chris got to go and work on track because he was that guy at that time. I got to go in the steward's office and be a part of that program, which was eye-opening. What goes on and how it works and how they do it in Europe and how silly most of it is, to be honest with you. But all those people on the racetrack were the top of their game,
kind of all-star
across the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got to meet and, interact with, guys from Hungary and guys, all over. That whole program ran out of video, which was a German group that had 15 cameras on track.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, if a call was made on track and video couldn't confirm it, the stewards never heard about it.
Interesting.
So I would be at dinner, and Nigel would say, "Hey, Taylor, whatever happened with 438 into the 422, in that heat race?" And I'd look through my notes and go, "We never heard about it. What was it?" And he goes, "Oh, it was blatant." And it's like,
Whatever it was.
we
yeah.
never
Video
heard about
didn't catch it.
Yeah, video didn't catch it. We never got it. And that was really eye-opening. The other thing was nobody took responsibility for anything. They all signed a piece of paper and handed it to somebody else.
Oh, interesting.
Throughout the entire, yeah. I mean, I came home with a 4-inch 3-ring binder of papers that I had to sign.
Wow.
And I had to run an inquiry from the FIA because FIA-CIK as a court case because we had penalized somebody who fought it, lost their appeal, fought the appeal, were allowed to race because the court in France couldn't hear the case because we had ejected them, I think. And so then they went to court, and we did like a Skype court with the FIA.
Get out.
And we lost.
Wow.
And
insane.
what had happened was we had black flagged somebody, and we held up a number board. The binder that has all the white panels with the black numbers on it.
Mm-hmm.
We did that for 6 consecutive laps. Then we quit scoring them.
That's about 4 too many.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we had video of the driver running down the front straight, looking away from the starter, and then looking back at the starter, as he passed the starter.
Ignoring it, yeah.
Yeah. And we laid all this out. And the way that worked, the race director could not black flag him. He had to call the stewart's office. We had to make the decision based on what the race director told us to black flag him. And we did. It was like he's ignored the black flag, all these other things. And so, pull him. So we quit scoring him. But when we got to court, the rule book states that you'll have a chalkboard, black, with white numbers on it.
You stop right now.
No, that was the entire argument.
That the number was not placed or was not put out there on the correct piece of
Board, yeah.
wow.
The way the rule is written, number must be displayed on a blackboard with white chalk.
God, that's infuriating.
Yeah. Oh, very. And there was a lot of that kind of stuff. I would argue in the steward's office over a call and say, the way I interpret this rule is not the way you're implementing it. And they go, it's not your job to interpret. And I said, no, I think that is my job.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we're here. It's like, this isn't black and white. And with the CIK rule book, 15 pages later, there'll be something that's contradictory. Let me just keep looking. So that was really eye-opening.
That's
good. And one of the guys, his career was being an official steward. He worked with F1. In fact, the first fine that he wanted to do at the World Finals was €25,000 because he's used to working with the F1 guys.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait a minute. He was late to a driver's meeting. Come on. Okay, it wasn't quite that, but still.
We saw him running up.
It's like, I dock him 10 positions. These guys over here, they're making friggin' dinner over this.
Oh, it was crazy.
Wow.
If there's one thing you think that we can take from the European side and one thing you think they can take from us, what do you think it would be?
He's on the officiating.
For officiating, yeah.
Yeah. That is tough.
Or if there's nothing.
My experience with them, it comes down to the racers. What we found was the officials over in Europe have a greater respect from the racers. They don't yell at the officials. They don't berate them. The officials have the ability to pull their license. And if you don't have a license, you can't race.
Yeah, I actually just heard about kind of how that works is the drivers are athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a certain, to go and do that, you are an athlete, and you have basically, like you said, an athletic license, basically.
Right, okay.
So, and we found that the first time I worked when Nigel came over to do the Rotax, I guess it was just the Nationals, and the guys that were from England treated him with great respect, called him sir, would argue, but it was cordial, and the Americans.
It was a discussion.
Yeah. The Americans would just berate, and it was that whole mindset. And the communication was a lot better, and people were listening, and you could part disagreeing, but they were listening. And we don't get that here.
You think that's because of the potential repercussion?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think that they're brought up in racing with that. They don't have the dads like I was that were screaming at race officials when their kids are watching, because there are repercussions.
And that's not going to get them anywhere. Maybe that's so. No. It's A, there's a repercussion doing it that way, and B, that's not going to help you anyway.
No.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And and it's funny because I've dealt with a lot of drivers that you guys know over the years that have yelled at me, and dads have yelled at me, and and I took one of them aside at the end of one of the seasons after we had had many arguments, and I told him, I said, listen, I really enjoy watching you race. You're a great driver. You're in a position where you will make it as a race driver. You've got the financial backing. You've got the talent. If you keep this attitude, you will not be a race driver, because the next level, they don't need you. And if you treat them the way you treat us, they will tell you to put it in the trailer and go home. Just
like if you talk to your team wrong at that level, there's 5 more guys they can call.
Oh, come on.
And they know that, well, there's 5 more drivers that team can call. I don't need your attitude here for our series.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That was one of the things, going back to your previous podcast, that Hayner said that I really liked. It's like, I don't need another driver under the tent. What I need is the mindset under the tent, and then we can work together.
Right.
And
I was a big fan of him saying that too.
Yeah, no, that stood out.
Well, and ironically, it's kind of how the CSK racing team. I mean, it's been about the chemistry under the team and whatnot, and we don't do everything that everybody else does, and for right or for wrong. And I do think there's certain things that, as a team, we could do differently or better, or maybe more hardcore, if you will, provide more or whatever. But at the end of the day, fun and sportsmanship has always been number one on the team.
Yeah.
And if you're not on that, maybe you should go somewhere else.
And we've had that talk where a couple drivers have hit us up about possibly going in their tent with us. We're like, well, if you want to, there's these things you're going to have to work on, whether it be how you talk to people or how you are on track.
Oh yeah.
The last thing we want is a bunch of BS under one tent.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think another thing, back to officiating and racing, we have an issue here in the States, especially at the bigger events, where the tuners, the dads, the mechanics always back the driver, right or wrong. And there are exceptions, but few. But those drivers that do something wrong need to have the repercussions from their own team to earn the respect of everybody on the racetrack. If you go out and run over people, and every time you hit the scales, it's always the other guy's fault, and your mechanic and dad are always, protecting you, even though it's obvious,
right?
That's a bad scenario, and that puts all of that respect for your fellow driver, for the officials, for what happens, right out the window.
Well, and certainly you're not going to get any in return.
No.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things at the drivers' meeting, I think, that I always do is, guys, race everybody like you want to be raced. And if you do that, I won't have to make a call.
Yeah.
And it's something that's always
Preach
being
that
said,
one.
And it's so simple, but I think everyone just
more
red
than fog. Red haze.
More than anything, people forget that, but it's such a common thing that's been around as long as racing's been around. It's like, it's like saying to some drivers, I think it's like saying smooth as fast. It's like, I got it. They just kind of take it off the shoulder.
It goes without saying.
Exactly.
Well, I'm saying it
because
you're
not
needs to be
doing
said.
it. So, really.
Going back to your you being a kid kart dad and being a parent yelling at the officials, out of 10 times, how many of those times would you say you were right for yelling at that official?
Right for yelling or right for the reason?
Right for the reason.
I was wrong every time I yelled. Most of the time, a good half or more, I was right.
Okay.
But I handled it poorly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Which means the guy probably stopped listening to you a long time ago.
Oh,
yeah.
exactly. exactly. It's just really funny when I have dads and kids and hotheads come up and start yelling at me, and it's like, really? You're bringing your B game. Come on. I know better.
Check out my notes.
Done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you can't let, like I said, those people that come up and just yell at you don't bother me. It's the ones where you made a mistake that bug you the next week.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
You know? The guys that come up yelling, it's like, no, it's emotional. I get it.
Yeah.
And I've taken drivers aside and said, you are right at the level where the next thing you say, I can't save you from it.
Right.
I know.
I like the way you put that.
I know you are emotional. I know you're frustrated. But if you continue down this road, I am tied to doing something that you won't like.
Yeah.
That's a
You
awesome way to
need
put
to
it.
take a break, come back, and we can talk about it.
Yep.
Especially when they're doing it in front of people.
No, exactly. And we try to do that with everything that we do, even on the Super Series or anything like that. I love the way you word that, but I've had those same type of conversations where like, hey, we can keep having a conversation or, dot.
Well, and that's the way, like a lot of, no one ever really does is have a conversation, just, it's really few and far between,
It's
just
rare.
like the number of team owners or tuners that will scold their driver are few and far between.
Well, and what I found through all the years of doing it, the people that do have the conversation, that do have the discussion, usually have been around. Buddy Rice, Brian Herta, most of the old timer. Tell you what, Matt Jaskell, but I'm thinking of
Matt Johnson?
Matt Johnson. Yeah, well, Jaskell too, but Johnson. He's emotional. He's a racer. He races hard. And I've made calls against him, and he's been forceful and respectful, But it's the guys that have been around, and, when it's like, buddy, when you've been inside the trailer being yelled at by people that control your income, you know how to handle things.
Yeah. It's a little different.
This is a go-kart race,
Yeah.
and you convey your point.
Right.
Which I didn't learn until I was on the other side of the fence.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've been doing painting. You've been doing your own business for a long time, and obviously you've been involved in racing in some way, shape, or form almost the entire time as well. Have you thought about putting the feet up at any point on either of those things? Is there going to be a time where you go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and retire, and then what are you going to retire to? You going to do more races?
You could be like Bob Niles and come work at a racetrack.
Yeah, there
I
you
could
go.
do that.
Yeah.
Funny thing is I started racing motorcycles again,
Oh, there you go.
and I had a blast.
Full
I got
circle.
hurt, but,
really full circle.
but I really, really enjoyed it. So I think I wanted to this season actually run for a championship.
What kind of motorcycle racing?
Enduro racing.
Oh, okay.
Out in the woods, single track, takes all day to finish the
Long
race kind of a
distance
thing.
stuff, yeah.
My brother is a veteran champion, a veteran rider, and I took
Just
Cameron.
the same one that was the badass when you guys were younger.
Yeah.
Sold you the bike.
He won an AMA championship on road bikes. He was, like I said, a professional downhiller and dual slalom guy. And
He's always been the two-wheel guy, huh?
yeah, he was really good in a race car too. We would go out, fun time, real quick. Test day in the Formula Ford. So we're out there. My dad's there. We finally have a real mechanic, and he's working on the car, and I go do a lap or a few laps, do a session. My dad gets in the car and comes back and goes to the mechanic. He goes, "This thing's a piece of crap." So they work on it and they dial it in. They play. He gets down to some good times. I jump back in and I'm 3 seconds quicker than he is. It's like, thanks, Dad. Could you set up all my race cars?
Yeah.
Then my brother gets in and goes out, and I'm watching 10 mistakes in a 10-turn racetrack.
Right.
And I'm going, I can find you a half second right now. So he comes in, I'm all excited. It's like, here, let me help you with this corner. Let me help you with this corner. And he goes, no. That's way too serious. I'm having fun. I got to go drive around the racetrack in a Formula car. You're taking all the fun out of it.
Oh.
And I was just the opposite. I read everything, studied everything to learn why things worked, how they worked, and then try to put that into practice. And he was going, no, it's not any fun. Like, yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, though. We think about who you are right now and how we know that you like to
read rule books.
read rule books and make your own rule book, etc.
Well, that's funny. I actually brought up in the Cameron episode, you probably remember this, the picture of you reading the Rock rule book when it changed from Rotax to Rock. You're just sitting there in your recliner, and you're going through it page for page.
When I would fly to Florida, the Rotax rule book, basically Chris Egger and I and I can't think of the other guy's name. He's the race director now for Florida Winter Tour. Basically wrote the rule book. We went through, played with the wording, allowed it to be a rule book that we could enforce, because you cannot enforce black and white.
Right.
You know, you have to have some leeway. The people that are on track making the decisions have to have some leeway. And, you know, when you're, must and should, may and will, those types of things need to be fine-tuned, because that dad who's an attorney will have that book in his hand when you make a call, and your call may be right, but there's a glitch.
Yeah, like a chalkboard and chalk.
Exactly. So we'd basically gone through the whole rule book. It took several seasons to fine-tune it till it worked. And every time I flew to Florida, I read the rule book, even though I wrote it.
Refresher.
Yeah. But that was just was funny, because when I was tuning for you, and I had a blast being a mechanic on that side of the fence those couple seasons ago. And
that was a good time.
Something would happen on track, and I'd be on the fence, and somebody'd run up, Taylor, what's the call?
Jeez.
And it's like, well, I can tell you what the rule is, but that's,
that same
you see
thing.
my shirt? It says FTK on it.
The same thing happened to me.
It's not another acronym for Tri-C.
No.
Oh, nice.
Exactly.
It's the same thing happened to me last year. During I'm not racing anymore, right? And you weren't racing, but something would happen on court. Actually, you were racing.
Was it the finale?
It was no, it was the year before. It happened then, and towards the end, because I wasn't running senior, right?
Right.
There's different elements, but definitely last year as well, where something would happen on course, and we'd be heading over to scales, and someone would ask me what I think, and I'm like, doesn't matter what I think.
Nope.
Doesn't matter what I think. I'm like, or I'll be like, tough call.
Yep.
And I know what the hell the call is. I'm just not going to open my bloody mouth.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, because Cameron will be at races, and I'll get a phone call or a text. What rule does this fall under? I might need to protest. And it's like, oh.
He was joking about actually having a protest against you.
He did.
Or, against you, but yeah.
We made a call on his driver, and he actually paid the protest money. And I told our secretary to tell him, no, don't even bother. And, it was one of those.
Who was Shelby?
It was Maddie, actually. But yeah, it was like, no, you don't want to do this, because you're going to lose your money, because it's just, and it actually was something that when I explained the rule to him and showed him what we did, we saved him from a non-droppable DQ, which got him the championship.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, I think that's part of it too. The officiate, I think this is a big for tech people as well. Officials and tech people, their job is not to try to ruin your race.
No.
Right?
Yeah,
They're there to enforce rules.
yes, try to make an even playing field.
Exactly. It's not trying to go find things to ruin your day.
Exactly.
They will literally try to do the opposite.
Yeah.
Like if like you just said, okay, this is the thing. However, this is also a thing. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Well, and you guys ran the challenge race. The rules are different. You know, it's a lot more precise, a lot more things that have to happen.
The whole morning thing was new to me with the what do you call it? Declarations.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's right.
And back when we had hot pits and other things, it was even more intense.
I bet.
And more rules needed to be followed. Every driver's meeting, guys, there's rules out there that you need to know about. If you don't understand them, come find me. I would much rather walk you through a scenario to keep you from getting into trouble than to have to penalize you because you didn't know.
Right.
And if I don't penalize you because you didn't know, that's not fair to every other competitor.
Exactly.
So
yeah, you're not doing a pick on them.
No.
You're doing it because you didn't do your job. And that's the other thing. I think the competitors and tuners and everybody, they forget It's their job to know the rules.
Exactly.
It's not your job to inform them of the rules.
Yep.
It's their job to know them, and then you enforce them.
Right.
And then you inform them of what they broke.
Yeah.
Well, and we've always said, we are here. We wear shirts that you can tell who we are.
Right.
If you have a question, come find us. And that's so critical, especially with new people coming into a national series. You don't want to push them away.
Yeah.
It's already stressful enough because most of them are racing guys they don't know that are faster than they are. They may be the local club champion, and now they're just a small fish in a big pond, and they've got all this other stuff that they have to deal with. Trying to make that transition as easy for them is easy.
Yeah.
If they pay attention.
Never mind a club driver who is brand new and is trying to figure things out. They might have to do it the hard way, but
well, that's
do
how
it nicely.
That's how I felt the challenge, right? I mean, I'm the club guy. I mean, and I was coming from 206 into the KA stuff,
Right.
and I decided to challenge it last second. As much shit as there was to take care of and make sure I had in order, it was all pretty straightforward. And if I didn't know it, I could come find one of you guys, and it was easy to get dialed in.
Everybody's really good to kind of let you know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think I found you guys, not because I knew you, but because you'd never raced.
Right.
You knew we were new.
And told you, along with the other 15 new guys, I went through the pits and found them. Guys, don't forget, you got to get your declarations in. Don't forget, come with your whatever to tech or whatever was the next scenario that you needed to be.
And it's something simple like that too. It's customer service to a point, right? It just goes a long way.
Certainly makes the experience a hell of a lot better.
Yep.
Well, hey, Taylor, I got to tell you, man, having an official on the show and being officials and whatnot, but also just with the wealth of knowledge you have in the sport of doing all the different things you have, I got a feeling we're going to get you back on here for another one at some point.
But it is funny, when you sent me that message and asked if I wanted to do this, I couldn't think of how I'd talk for 20 minutes. I'm not that exciting. I really don't know what I have to talk about.
Nobody thinks that they are,
Yep.
but they're usually wrong.
Yeah.
The little quips we've gotten from you on event days of stories here and there. I was looking forward to finally hearing them all from you today.
Yeah.
So
This is
And
a
you
good
just
time.
got the tip of the iceberg with the cops coming at Washington and
Yeah.
me being DQ'd for blocking. And
Yeah, for an official, you have done a lot of shit wrong.
I have. And hopefully I've learned.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
I guess that's the important part. But once again, man, thanks for being on
Had
the
a
show.
blast.
It's a good
And,
time.
You made it easy, guys.
That's our job, I suppose. And you were great at yours. Thanks again, buddy.
You got it. Thanks.